Testing, 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 testing. Can you guys hear me okay? How's that? Guys. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon.
Test, test.
This one doesn't. Testing, testing. All right. I see people saying they can hear. All right. Good, good. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate you. We've got a lot to go over today. This is an Office of Insurance Regulation chat. So you may recall that about every quarter we do the chat with information from the board meeting and financials. Every quarter we update you on anything that occurred in the most recent board meeting and then on financials as well. So that's what we're going to focus on today. We have a number of items to cover. We have a few introductions as well that we want to introduce you to our new Director of Nursing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Etta, who's going to lead us in prayer.
Let's pray. Dear kind and most compassionate, loving Heavenly Father, we come at this moment just acknowledging our love for you and receiving your love for us. God, we thank you for this community, Florida Presbyterian Homes, which you have provided for us under your care. We thank you for the leadership here. We thank you for the camaraderie here. We thank you for the diversity here. We thank you that your love is ever present. We ask that you would be with us in our meetings, that you would be with us in our conversations, that you would be with us in our deliberations, that you would let your Holy Spirit lead and guide us in all truth and all knowledge. Make yourself evident here on this campus as you've always done, as you've always provided for us and protected us. And as we move forward into our future, let it be with you. We give you praise, honor, and glory for the work that you have done, the work that you are doing now, that's seen and unseen, and also the work that you continue to do for us as you provide for us and communities like us. Bless us and keep us is our prayer. Embrace those who need an special embrace today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Etta. So let's see. So on the agenda today, we're going to go over the CEO Executive Director report, and I'll update you all on key things that occurred in our recent board meeting. We'll talk about the affiliation and the letter that went out yesterday and next steps in the affiliation process. Cher is going to file a report on independent living and residential living occupancy. And then John and I are going to talk about some safety and security initiatives that are underway, as well as preparation for the new hurricane season 2023. Then David is going to do a PowerPoint presentation on year-to-date financials, as well as our bank and our OIR covenants. And that is a handout, and it looks like there's one left. So there's a handout up here if you haven't received it yet. Otherwise, David will do it here on the PowerPoint as well. And then I will provide the assisted living update. Tasha had sent me information to share with you all. And then we'll invite Siobhan, our administrator, to come up and update everybody on Porter McGrath. At that point, hopefully Samantha, who's in a meeting right now, hopefully by then Samantha, our Life Enrichment Director, will be here, and she'll be able to share with you some of the initiatives, programs, events that are coming up with Life Enrichment. And then I'll turn it back over to Etta, who will cover spiritual life initiatives here on the campus. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move forward in the CEO Executive Director report. And I will note we have Scott Langston, one of our board members here, as well as Dick Huggins, a resident who is on our board as well. Thank you both for being here. In the board meeting, it says January here, but it's the April board meeting that occurred last week. In the board meeting, each of the committees of the board file a report to the board. The committees of the board meet each quarter prior to the board meeting. They file the reports in the board meeting. The Quality of Care Committee, they get a report from Porter McGrath, exactly like what you're hearing, the occupancy report, and then anything on referrals and denials from Lakeland Regional and other health systems. They get the assisted living update. We talk about staff openings and turnover, but they only had one motion from the Quality Committee, and that was to approve the risk management plan and the job description for our risk management officer. We're part of an organization called Caring Communities. Caring Communities is what's called a reciprocal risk retention group. Liability insurance in the state of Florida and all across the country over the past 20 years has skyrocketed, especially in our field. So the organization Caring Communities was created about 20 years ago for providers like Florida Presbyterian Homes, so we can manage the potential expense of liability coverage in our field. We are a member and an owner of Caring Communities, and part of the program and service that they provide is they come out and audit the organization to look at how do we make our facility, our environment, our program more safe for our residents. What do we need to do to minimize risk for our residents? One of the things when they came out about a year and a half ago was they found that, bless you, they found that the existing risk management plan that we had was drafted in 2004. So it was woefully out of date. So the first thing they had put as a recommendation was to update that risk management plan. So we did that. We updated our risk management plan. We presented it to the Quality Committee, and it was approved at Quality and then presented along with the job description for our risk management officer, who is Siobhan. Our administrator is our risk management officer. The job description and the plan were approved. The motion was made to the board, and the board approved the new risk management plan as well as the job description. So that has moved forward, and we will review that plan with the board every year going forward through the Quality Committee. For those of you who are on the phone, if you could please put your phone on mute or silence, and then whenever you have a comment or question, please just take your phone off of mute or silent. Okay. The next committee that if you could please take your phone and put it on mute or silent, that would be greatly appreciated. So the next committee that presented to the board was the Governance Committee. They had no motions coming to the board in the board meeting. Basically what the Governance Committee was talking about is looking at any of our existing governance structure and policy and looking at, as we're doing due diligence, how does that compare with some of the governance structure that the affiliate is looking at as well. So there wasn't a whole lot of discussion out of the Governance Committee. Strategic planning, The same. The strategic planning receives a report from myself, from Tasha, from Siobhan, looking at the initiatives with Lakeland Regional, how we're seeking to improve. Oh, okay. Thank you. Testing, testing. Oh, yeah.
That good?
That sounds a lot louder, yeah. Thank you. So the strategic plan, we updated the board on discussions with Lakeland Regional. One of the discussions we've talked with you about pretty much every meeting. We meet with Lakeland Regional, I think quarterly now, with Patrick Phillips, who is the VP, Chief Planning Officer for Lakeland Regional, Leslie Yachty, who's in charge of discharge planners. Siobhan talks to her regularly and touches base with her. The key is building that relationship so we get more referrals. And I won't steal any of Siobhan's thunder about occupancy or anything like that. I'll leave that for her to talk about. But that's primarily what we talked about in strategic planning. And then the Finance Committee met and they had a motion. They talked about the 2022 audit, and David will provide more detail on that. The 2022 audit was presented by the Finance Committee to be accepted by the board, and it was voted on and accepted by the board. So the 2022 audit has been accepted by our board. That is a public document, so if it's something that any of you would like to see, you're more than welcome to let David know, and he will provide that for you. The other motion that came out of the Finance Committee, you've heard us talk before about something called an employee retention credit, and what that is an employee retention credit is a program provided by the federal government that assists organizations who had experienced any type of financial loss during the period of COVID since 2020 through 2021. And so we had been looking at that. David and I had been looking and talking about, should we apply for that? At one point, we were not eligible. Then they changed the eligibility requirement. So we found an organization that facilitates this type of a process to apply for review, and we would apply to receive funds through the employee retention credit. The board in their meeting had met with this organization through our Finance Committee. They also met with our accounting and audit firm, Clifton Larson Allen, and the board determined that they would move forward with applying for the employee retention credit. Because we're in this discussion of the affiliation sponsorship, we are required within the structure of the relationship as it exists today to notify the potential affiliate sponsor, who you all know now is Westminster. So we notified Westminster, and the reason we notified them is there's a window for an audit of the employee retention credit to occur. And in all likelihood, it would be at a time, if they determined they were going to audit, that Westminster would be the organization who would be the affiliate sponsor. And so we wanted to make sure that they were okay with us applying for the employee retention credit. So at this point, they're reviewing it with their legal and with their auditor to determine if it's something they want us to move forward on. But we needed our board to say yes or no before we went to talk to the affiliate sponsor. So that was covered within the Finance Committee report to the board. We also received the report that you're going to hear from David, the 2023 year to date. So you'll be hearing the same information and data that the board received on where we're at in 2023 at this point year to date. The majority of the conversation at that point, we shifted to what we call the Alpha Project. And the Alpha Project is the affiliation sponsorship. That's something that we initiated. Actually, we started talking about it with the board, looking at all different options for the organization going forward to improve our financial sustainability and strength of the organization. We looked at multiple options. The board determined at that point in time, after much consideration and review, that we should consider an affiliate sponsorship. For a lot of you, you've heard this before, but I'm going to be a little repetitive because we have some new residents as well. The affiliate sponsorship effort, we are working with an organization called Ziegler. Ziegler is within our field. They're the leading loan investment organization in the field for not-for-profit long-term care. They know everybody in our field. They have a division of Ziegler that all they do is matchmake, basically, organizations who are seeking an affiliate sponsor. So working with Ziegler, we identified about 4 organizations, and you may recall, in a meeting like this a few months ago, we had a discussion with residents saying we would like to have a voice in that process. And Dick and Martha held a meeting here in the chapel and asked you, what's important to you regarding an affiliate sponsor? What are you looking for? What are you concerned about? Dick and Martha provided us with that information that was shared with the board task force and the full board as they're considering this process. We also surveyed our employees, and we had about 43 employees that responded to that survey, asking them the same thing. What are you looking for? What are your concerns? What's important to you with an affiliate sponsor? Very similar, from what the residents were looking for and what the staff was looking for. The residents had more of a focus on making sure it was a not-for-profit, that it was faith-based, and that it was an organization based in Florida that's done this before. That was more what we heard from the residents. The staff were more concerned about making sure the organization has a history of engaging residents in the organization. And they also said we want them to engage staff in the organization. That relationship is critical. So based on that information and based on where the board was trying to look at and say what type of organization is best suited to become the affiliate sponsor here, we identified 4 organizations. Through the process with Ziegler, the board determined they wanted to pursue the discussion with Westminster. And so at that point in time, Ziegler introduced us to Westminster, and we began the process that eventually led to what's called an indication of interest, where Westminster wrote a letter to our board saying, we are interested in talking with you about the potential of Westminster becoming the affiliate sponsor. Once that was reviewed and approved by the board, it then led into the discussion of now we need to determine, are both of us interested in moving forward into due diligence? And what due diligence is we're asking them for a lot of data and information. They're asking us for a lot of data and information. All of that specific information is confidential. So when we shared our information with them, they can't take all that information, pass it around, and show it around. We can't take their information that they provided us and show it to you or share it with you or anyone else. So at that point, both organizations signed a document called a letter of intent. The letter of intent basically says both of us are interested in initiating a due diligence process to determine if it's in the best interest of Florida Presbyterian Homes and if it's in the best interest of Westminster to move forward in the process and due diligence. We signed that document, and so from that point, we initiated due diligence. And so we have been receiving, as I said, volumes of information. We've provided them volumes of information. That's where we're at today. And in the discussion, we said, at what point, as soon as we were comfortable, could we share the group that we were talking to with our residents and with our staff, with the family and POAs of our assisted living and skilled care residents, as well as with key vendors and our city through Sean Sherhouse, our city manager. And during the board meeting, the board talked about it in the board meeting, and they determined that they would like to present that information prior to this meeting. And so we went back to Westminster and said the board had requested that we can communicate this information prior to the Wednesday resident chat. They agreed. They said they were at a point where they were comfortable with us informing our residents and our staff that Westminster would be the affiliate sponsor. I want to stress, this is not done. I want to be really clear, this is not done. This is part of a process. We're in the point where we're about 50% through the due diligence. But we both felt it would be the best for, I know there's rumors going around and there's all sorts of stories going around, and both organizations felt comfortable enough that this would be a good point in time to let the residents know. Nancy, you have a question? Sure. Okay. You know what, let me get you the mic so that way. Let's see. Okay. There you go.
My question is, who are the 3 other contenders?
Yeah, I can't share that, but I'll answer.
Okay,
Yeah.
and my comment is, Westminster gave my husband and I a bait and switch.
Yeah.
Bait and switch. We were looking forward to living there. We put our money down, and they called us, and they said, we have a place for you now. So we were really excited because the place is on the bay, and it has beautiful views of the bay, and we were so excited. So we went there, and the first thing the guy said is, we looked through your finances and see that you can't afford the 2 bedrooms that we told you you could afford. And they showed us a 1-bedroom apartment that is smaller than a lot of the assisted living apartments we have here. And he said, this is what we could offer you. And that, I feel, was a bait and switch.
Okay. So the statement about the bait and switch, I can't address because I wasn't in the room and I have no idea what was communicated to whom. I'm comfortable with you sharing that, but I just can't, there's nothing I could speak to that. The question was, there was 3 other organizations that we had also looked at, and who are they? Cannot state that. It's in the confidentiality agreement, the non-disclosure that we have, that we can't share who that is. The reason is, they don't want it out there that, 1, that they lost out on a potential opportunity. 2, they don't want it out there because they may be talking to other organizations, and it's like when you met your spouse the first time and you're kind of not quite sure they're the one, and you're also talking to somebody else. You never want to see them in the pizza parlor at the same time. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like a situation like that. So that's why we can't share who that is. But in the affiliate discussion, I also want to make sure that people understand what is an affiliate sponsor. We've talked about it a couple of times, but I want to make sure it might be new to some folks too. An affiliate sponsor would come in and be the organization that is responsible for governance, day-to-day operations, and they would have the responsibility for our debt and our liabilities, and they would also have the ownership of our assets. So they would bring in their organization at the day that the transition was agreed upon as the start date, and they would become the operator and the governance for Florida Presbyterian Homes. So that's, that's what an affiliate sponsor is. It's not like a for-profit where one organization is buying another one, where somebody's writing a check. That's not what this is. When it's a not-for-profit, there isn't a cash transaction. They're simply coming in and taking the liabilities as well as the assets and becoming responsible for managing and governing the organization. So that's structurally how it works. And the term they use is affiliate sponsor. They would become the affiliate sponsor at that point in time. So in the process that we're in the due diligence at this point. From a timing perspective, we would assume that will go for another month or so. And then at that point, if everything is clean in the due diligence, they would submit what's called an affiliation agreement for our board to review. And then if the board determined that they were ready to sign the affiliation agreement, that affiliation agreement would be the final document. And it would state at what point does the transition occur where they become the governance entity and the operating entity. So they would become affiliate sponsor based on the date that's defined in the affiliation agreement. So I've covered a lot of ground. I know questions, comments, and I'm going to grab the mic. Oh, thanks, Siobhan. Got a gentleman here, a gentleman there. Hey, Dawn. Hey, Bill.
Any contracts that are in place now, do they pass through?
Great question. So I'm going to repeat the question that Bill asked. And I'm glad you brought it up because I want to cover that. The question was, any of the contracts that exist now, do they pass through to the other entity? Your residency agreements all pass through to the other entity, Westminster in this case, and they have to abide by that residency agreement. They cannot come in and say, all of you need new contracts. Everybody, no. They are agreeing to abide by the residency agreements. I want to speak to that, though, because I had a resident that was asking Rick the other day, can you write a special contract for me that says that you agree 5 years from now that you're going to recarpet my house and repaint my house? So I want to make it clear, they're only agreeing to the residency agreements. I've said to our management team and staff, do not create new contracts, new agreements with anyone. They will not be liable for anything like that. They're only agreeing to abide by the residency agreement. So we shared with that resident that we can't. That isn't something that we would sign. And I would also, like I shared with Rick and her, we don't have that now. We don't have a statement that we sign a document and say, okay, we agree we're going to repaint your house and repaint or recarpet 5 years from now when you hit a 10-year window. So the reason we don't do that and why that's not done in our field is because nobody knows where the capital budget will be at that point in time. And you can't pre-commit to doing a lot of different type of work if you don't know where the capital budget's going to be at. So that's why it doesn't exist today, and that's why we wouldn't sign it. So thank you, Bill, for bringing that forward. We have a gentleman right over here. Oh, okay. And Donna, and then we've got Roger. We've got a couple people up here. Come on, left side. No one's asked a question yet. Let's go.
I think I heard you say that they would be looking over the finances and be responsible for management.
Yes,
You did say that, right?
yes, correct.
What does that mean for your job and David's jobs?
Yeah, so the question is, I made the statement that this would be, they would take over the responsibility of financials, the assets, the liabilities, and what does that mean for David and I? I will answer it stating first, 100% I don't know. I have assumptions based on initial conversations that suggest they already have a CEO in their corporate. They already have a CFO in their corporate. So the assumption is that we would not have a position going forward. They may change that. They may say, well, we want a period where you help us in the transition. I don't know. But the assumption is that you don't have two CEOs in an organization. You don't have two CFOs in an organization. The rest of the staff, I think the key here is the staff that are providing the support and the care, the people who are in positions that are by license required are safe because they don't have people waiting in a building somewhere and then a speaker goes off and says, well, these 12 people, please get on the bus and get over to Florida Presbyterian Homes to start your work. I mean, they're like we are. They're trying to find staff. And we got really good staff. And they're hearing that over and over again that, hey, we got really good staff. So they're going to be really happy to come here and go, wow, these are really good staff. So they will evaluate just like we evaluate every employee every year to determine what makes sense for them and us. So we don't know 100% at this point, you know, how that's going to play out, but we know they need our staff. Okay, other questions, anybody? Oh, we got some on this side, all right. We'll even it out.
Yes. Is it premature to ask or inquire about the background of Westminster? So what their properties are, where they're located?
Sure. I would tell you that it's not premature. I think if you do a Google search for Westminster Communities of Florida, you'll get all that. You'll get all that in spades. I don't want to sit here and go, well, they've got one over here, they got one over there. I think the best thing to do is anybody that has a question like that wants to know more, please just do a Google search. Now, I will say, if this moves forward and we sign an affiliation agreement, there'll be a notice that comes out from both our board chair and them, and then they will come here and we will introduce you and you'll be able to ask them, you know, specific questions at that point in time. But good question, but no, I would just say at this point, if you want to learn more, definitely, you know, do the Google search. I'll get you back here.
I was wondering about the Loving Care Fund. Are all the residents that are under that now going to continue to be under that?
Yes, so
So will those funds be rolled into their corporate?
Two questions on the Loving Care Fund. Thank you, Dick. And this was asked yesterday by Paula. So in the discussions in the Loving Care Fund, what they have agreed to verbally is that the Loving Care Fund would be maintained only for Florida Presbyterian Home residents. Now, that also means in the future. So if people as people move in here, they'll become eligible for that fund as well. Just like as if nothing changed, the Loving Care Fund will be maintained. The second question was, will that be pooled with a larger fund? Westminster has a large foundation. They do a lot of fundraising. So the money will be in a pool, but it will be accounted for under a separate GL for Florida Presbyterian Homes. They've done that for every organization that's where they're an affiliate sponsor, so they can look and see the organization had this much money when they started, and then over the years we've been able to add through interest and investment and donations this much more. It all comes to here. So it's really important. That was something that a lot of you told us when we started talking about this, that the Loving Care Fund needed to be maintained here only. So they couldn't take our money and say, well, let's put it over there, let's put it over there. So good question. And you would know, because I know you would know that. But that's exactly what we heard from you all, is that it should be here. And this organization, this isn't the first time they're doing this. The thing that we feel really good about is the shared sense of values and purpose. And they're not coming in and saying, okay, the day we start, we're eliminating the name, we're going to change your mission, we're going to take, they're coming in and saying, we want to support your mission. In fact, before, I think I brought the letter that was sent to their residents and their board. I think I brought it. I hope I brought it. It was so well written. I wanted to, phooey, maybe I didn't. Well, do you? Thanks. Thank you, sir. Thank you, thank you. You don't mind if I read this? Okay. So, announcement. Potential affiliation sponsorship initiative with Florida Presbyterian Homes of Lakeland. Dear residents and team members, I'm writing to inform you that Westminster Communities of Florida is exploring an affiliation agreement with the nearby Florida Presbyterian Homes in Lakeland. We have executed a letter of intent and are engaged in the due diligence process of reviewing the potential benefits of this affiliation to both organizations. Our two organizations are similar, with shared Presbyterian roots. Westminster Communities of Florida is a family of not-for-profit, faith-based senior living communities and the state's largest nonprofit provider of senior housing. We were founded in 1954 as Presbyterian Homes of the Synod of Florida, and today we are headquartered in Orlando. Our family has grown to consist of 22 communities around Florida with more than 7,000 residents and 2,700 employees. Florida Presbyterian Homes was established in 1955, founded by the community of Lakeland's Westminster Presbyterian Church. It started with the purchase of a single 6-room house to serve older adults in Lakeland and has grown to serve more than 300 residents on a 48-acre campus set on Lake Hunter. We also share similar missions. At Westminster Communities of Florida, we place our values as a faith-based organization serving older adults at the core of all that we do. We too emphasize wellness and active lifestyles and honor each individual's dignity and independence. We also believe in good stewardship of our resources. And Westminster Communities of Florida has an investment-grade bond rating of A- from Fitch Ratings. We believe that our extensive resources and experience in managing life plan communities will help to support and preserve the historic mission of Florida Presbyterian Homes well into the future. Rest assured that our goal is to ensure the financial health and well-being of your community and strengthen our family of communities. That way, we can continue to serve you and your fellow residents and to make your community shine for all. Sincerely, Terry Rogers, President and Chief Executive Officer. So I think it's good to, that's what their residents receive, which is very consistent with everything that where we're at and our mission and vision and what we've been talking about. Ken, who's got up? Roger, and then we'll get back to Ken.
I've got to, I think just two things, and make sure, the contract that we originally signed with Florida Presbyterian obviously becomes valid after this.
Yes.
The other thing is, my understanding is the board of directors, the current FPH board of directors will be dissolved and the Westminster board of directors will be our source.
Two things, and if I misstate, correct me. Two things that Roger brought up. One is that, yes, the residency agreement that you signed with our organization transfers to them as the affiliate sponsor and is maintained. You do not have new contracts, or those contracts aren't changed. So they abide by the residency agreement that you have. The second question was about the board and governance and the dissolution of our existing board. In a lot of these types of affiliation sponsorship changes, a lot of times the corporate entity dissolves the board completely and there is no local representation. That was part of our discussion with them, and they had suggested that the board nominate 2 board members from our existing board to be on the parent board. That, when I worked at Covenant Retirement Communities as a consultant, that's what they used to do. That way there was some local tie to the corporate and the organization. The other thing we're talking about is the potential of having some of our board members in an advisory capacity that are focused primarily on developing the independent living apartments. And so that's another way that they can continue to be connected locally. So good question. Ken?
This is really a comment. I've done a fair amount of research with Nancy, and we believe that this organization is one of the lowest cost providers of this kind of service in Florida. And I don't know that that exposes us to raises in the future, but that's my only, we have also toured one of Westminster's facilities in Sarasota, and it's a very well-run, very welcoming, and very pleasant community to live in. So I think that having them work with us is an advantage.
Yep. Thank you for sharing. We've got a couple more here, Shirley, and then we had someone over here.
Having had the back to not the beginning of Florida Westminster Communities, but we were exposed to this. My husband was on committees, and I am delighted with your decision.
Thanks, Shirley. Oh, I'll try to repeat it. I think basically what Shirley was saying is that Shirley's husband used to be on the board here, and they're both very familiar with Westminster. And she was echoing a lot of what Ken said and said thank you to the board and management for the diligence and thoughtfulness that has gone into this process. Is that it basically, Shirley? Okay. Was there another question or comment over here? I thought there was. Okay. All right, Sam's telling me to get on with it. Okay, so next steps on the affiliate sponsorship. The next time we meet, we'll have completed the due diligence at that point, and we'll update you along the way as we move forward with that. We have on site today a gentleman from Westminster who is meeting with Dean. And so he is meeting with Allison, Samanda, Etta, and Dean, and looking at our life enrichment program and looking at our dining program. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll be having additional visitors, and you'll see them with their shirt and their logo on. And we felt that timing-wise, again, that it was really important for Dean and our staff to know who they're talking to. Could you imagine somebody coming in and they can't say, well, I'm Mario, I'm from Westminster. They'd have to say, well, just call me Fred, and can't tell you where I'm from. So now they're going to learn from us, we're going to learn from them. And then we have a group of board members, including resident board members, who are going to be going out with groups from our staff, resident board members, and board members out to visit some of their communities and meet, like they're meeting with our managers, we're going to meet with their managers and get a feel for their operation as well. So that's the process that we're in. So I'll take the Sam's point and move on. Strategic opportunities, I pretty much talked about that. I'm going to invite Cher up, and Cher's going to give us an update, as she did in the last chat, on how things are going with independent living and residential living occupancy. Do you want to use it? Got it? Here, Cher. Hey, here, Cher. Cher. Let's see. I'll bring it to you.
I had a tour today, and gosh, that bright light is right in my face.
Right into the mic.
This is better. I had a tour today with a lady who did not want to be here. Her daughter forced her to come here. I've heard that many times. She went to the tour of our competition, and she told her daughter, who lives in Pennsylvania, that one resident nodded at her during her lunch tour at that property. Today she toured with me, and 11 residents said hello to her, 9 employees said hello to her, and Buffy Roller joined us for lunch. Buffy Roller was one of those people who toured who did not want to be here several years ago. So, my report is pretty up to date, with the exception to the fact that if my dreams come true, we can add 149,000 to this, because I have the Nora Rife apartment on hold for the tour who came today. I'm doing some tours that are a little bit different now, because we have had so many move-ins and we have accommodated so many new residents from the waiting list. I have a new specialty I like to call one and done. And that means one time they walk in the door and they're done, and we get their key. We give them the keys and they get to join you all. So I would also like to say, before I read my report, that 55 years ago, when my daughter was a little girl, my grandparents moved into a beautiful, pristine, professionally run community in Greenwood, Indiana, that was managed by Westminster. My kids called that grandparent set Grandma and Grandpa Elevator because they lived on the 3rd floor of that beautiful building, and that was Westminster. That was a long time ago. So here are our numbers right now. Year-to-date life occupancy fee move-ins, $1,209,900. We have contracted and scheduled to move in 897,000, and these move-ins are all taking place in the next 5 to 6 weeks. The last few people who have sold homes to move here have sold them within a day or 2. The move-in dates, John, are you here, John? Yeah, John keeps cooperating very well when I keep moving the move-in date up sooner and sooner and sooner, because when they sell the home, the people want the home right away, and John and Ryan and Rick are all working with me to get them all moved in, so they'll be joining us soon. We have 416,000 contracts pending, and that just means that they're good to go. I'm just waiting for their medical reports. When the medical reports come in, they'll interview with Katie Gannon. She'll confirm that they're able to live independently, and they'll be here. So that gives us 1,313,000 contracted and contracts pending, which gives us year-to-date $2,522,900, which is $137,900 more than 2022 the whole year. So we will be welcoming John and Laverne Tilson from Winter Haven, Dwayne and Judy Hopkins from Lakeland, Florida. Ted and Celie Wilhite from Lakeland, Florida. Richard DeCipio and Regina Albridge from Norristown, Pennsylvania. And Karen Stevenson from South Carolina. We're getting a lot of Pennsylvania people and South Carolina people. And many of you are referring your friends. So don't forget, that's a $1,000 resident referral credit to your monthly service fee when you refer someone. Waiting list additions, we have 47 total on the waiting list. We've had 23 transfers on site, 10 deaths, and that's where all these houses come from. And we have one house and 2 duplexes unsold. But if things go as I hope tomorrow, I'll get one of those duplexes. So that's our story.
Thank you, Cher. Thank you. So with that, thank you so much, Cher.
Oh,
You see? Yeah, go ahead.
You know we haven't had a lot of... I thought I could scream really well. You know we haven't had a lot of activity because of, COVID. So we are trying to get ourselves back in business. We're planning a style show, and we are planning a downsizing seminar. We had a little glitch in the coordination of the mailing, but the mailings did hit the doors yesterday. So please mark your calendars for May the 17th, that's a Wednesday, and June the 21st, that's a Wednesday, at 2 o'clock in the chapel, and you don't have to remember this because Carol's going to remind you. We want to invite all of you to the style show and the downsizing seminar, so when our prospects do come, they can meet you. And the spotlight for the models, we have a lot of brand new residents who are modeling, so you're going to meet your new neighbors too. And right now we have 12 models, and we appreciate them volunteering, and please plan to join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Cher. They asked me to model a garage. I declined. I want to share, Westminster is in Florida only. The Westminster that Cher's referring to, there are Westminsters all over the country. They're all kind of different. The Midwest has an entity called Westminster of the Midwest, but the group that we're working with right now is Florida. They're based in Florida. They're not affiliated with any other organization. With that, I'm going to turn it over to David. You all have hopefully the handout that David had provided, and he's going to go through, we always do this with OIR, and appreciate David's skills and ability to prepare that information for you and present it to you. David, do you want this or do you want that? Okay. Oh, sit down, David. Sorry. I forgot security and John. Thank you. Thanks, Donna. Sorry, David. Sorry. John, come on up. So a couple of things. I'll go over the hurricane items while John is coming up. So for those of you who've been here from last year where we had 2 hurricanes that hit within about an 8-day period, the staff that was here and involved in Ian and spent the night and stayed through until everybody was safe, we greatly appreciate. The staff did a phenomenal job, and our staff always does. In times like that, I feel very comfortable that we've got wonderful people like John and others who truly put the residents first. Every year, we send out on May 5th a letter that goes to our residential living and independent living residents that just says we're in that preparation mode, we're in hurricane season, and provides you with a list of detail for our apartment residents as well as for residential living residents. And so that will go out on Friday. In that packet, you'll also see from the Red Cross what to do before the hurricane, what to do during a hurricane, and what to do after a hurricane. The only things that are a little bit relatively new is we had a recommendation last year to have some type of power to MacArthur. because last year we had, with Ian, we had a number of days where power was out completely. And so what Rick has done is we have a generator that's a propane-based generator, and we'll bring that generator out to MacArthur should we have a power outage. It'll only function and operate basically the kitchen area. We just need it to support, so if people need to come in and get their phones charged, or if they want to put something in the fridge, or they have anything they want to prepare, you know, so we can bring food down into the MacArthur and put it in the fridge and put it on stovetop and have it there for you. That's what that propane's going to be for. It's not going to run 24/7. It'll run for a few hours, and then we'll get new propane to keep it going for the next day. That's really the only major difference. But when you get the letter on Friday, if you have any questions or comments or concerns, please let me know. And if we need to do a follow-up meeting specific to the hurricane, we'll do that when Rick gets back. He gets back next Tuesday. So before I introduce John, and I'm sorry, I'm shifting here again, I see Dawn back there and Siobhan, and I would like Siobhan and Dawn to come up so we can introduce Dawn. I know Dawn is somebody that we're really excited about introducing you to, and I know that she's got a lot on her plate, so I want to make sure. Thanks, John. You got? Whoop, here I go. Hi.
Good afternoon, everyone. As many of you know, we had a resignation in PMG back in March. Our director of nursing resigned, and she was going on to bigger and better things. She had just recently finished school for her master's degree, so she wanted to venture out and do some other things. So we were very lucky to find Dawn. Now, Dawn isn't new to Florida Presbyterian. Dawn has actually interviewed before. Yeah. So she interviewed probably a few years ago, was it? Yeah. And at that time, she wanted to stay where she was located at the time, and that was the Roar home in Bartow. So if anyone has listened to the news and knows the county, Polk County owns the Roar home, and they decided to get out of the business of nursing homes. So they are actively trying to sell the Roar home. So Dawn, when we posted the position, Dawn thought it was maybe a good time for her to come and investigate more and see really Florida Presbyterian. So she did that. We loved her. I hope she loves us. We loved her, and we offered her the position, and she graciously accepted. So I'm going to turn it over to Dawn Palmer, our new director of nursing, and let her tell you a little bit about herself.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to meet you. I'm very excited to be here as the new director of nursing of PMG. I have 18 years of experience in long-term care. I worked at the Roar home. I started out as a CNA there. I became an LPN, went on to get my registered nursing license. I was the infection control staff development coordinator. I also did supervising and treatments. I've been the assistant director of nursing. I also was trained to do housekeeping while I was doing infection control because I wanted to make sure that the housekeeping was doing what they needed to do so that the residents were safe, and I also did activities there for a few months. So I have a wide range of experience in long-term care. Also, when I became a registered nurse, I worked at Lake Wales Hospital for 7 years to build my ability to advance my skills because I had only been at the Roar home and I wanted to make sure that I really had a good grasp on how to be a registered nurse and how to deliver care to people. So I love the geriatric field. I love everyone. I have a strong foundation in God, and I think that He has provided me with this opportunity. I had prayed about it, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I absolutely love the Roar Home. I was very sad to see that it was going to be selling. I had prayed about it, and this opportunity had come about, and I felt strongly that this is where God was leading me. So I hope in the future that you get to know me well. I'm here to serve you and to do what you need for your whole total health and well-being, and I'm always there if anyone needs me, but I do love caring for people. I feel like it is my calling in life, and so thank you for letting me work here and serve you.
Thanks. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so while I have the floor, I am going to go over a few things for PMG. So today our census is 56. As everyone knows, we're licensed for 68 beds. 66 of those beds are in operation. 2 of those beds are actually an office. It was a semi-private room that we made an office out of. So we are still accepting admissions. We are doing good things down in PMG, as Dawn has only been here 8 days now, but she has a lot of good ideas. And so we are hoping that the state surveyors stay away for a while, so we can get our bearings down there, and Dawn can get and implement some things that she's going to bring along with her. The relationship with Lakeland Regional is coming along. As Joe said, Leslie and I touch base on a regular basis. She is the director over the case managers, and she's actually starting to use me as a resource. She has reached out lately to ask a couple of just random questions. So I think we have developed that relationship, and we will continue to do so. And that's really important for PMG, for not only our residents here in the community, but also the greater residents of Lakeland. So also we're having a little change in physicians right now down in PMG. So Dr. Adriano has decided to take a leave of absence, and which means that we will have Dr. Dean and Dr. Zadie seeing the residents right now. Dr. Haight, who is our medical director, is also going to be helping with short-term residents that are there for rehab, but he also is involved in helping us to possibly bring on board at least one more doctor if we can, just to give more choice for the residents. So we're working on that right now. Is there any questions for PMG? Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Siobhan. John, I asked John to talk a little bit about the security initiatives in 4 Bunker, as well as in Porter McGrath and assisted living. This is something we've been talking about in terms of the locks and the entranceways and camera systems and so on. And John's going to update us on where we're at with that.
Good afternoon, everybody. What we have done for the main entrance, the A entrance, we've got a video ring doorbell, kind of like some of you guys have on your houses, but it will allow us, if somebody comes to that door after we lock it down, To press that button, our security, it will ring to their phone, and they have the ability to open the door to let that person in, whether it be staff member, resident, after-hours doctor, or whatever it may be. We've also implemented the same thing on the back of Four Bunker Manor, right there by the golf cart parking. That door has that ability to now. They just got it working yesterday, so our security guards will be able to fully use it and operate it tonight. We did go ahead also, and off of our nurse call system, we put right above all these buttons, and then several different places, like in the health center going into the doors to the patient area, the little red, little box with a red button on it, it rings to the nurse's station or to the security's radio, depending on which door it is and where it may be located on campus. We got one at the Four Bunker Manor, there's one at the A entrance, each door's going into the health center, and then one going into the ALF as well. All right, anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am. We changed it to push, push button. Yes, ma'am. Yes, Miss Barron. Oh, Miss Brown. Oh, okay. I'll have to look at that. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Perrin?
And is it, I know you're telling us that, but I really am concerned to go by there at night and nobody's there.
It's only manned by a few residents who volunteer, but at 7 p.m. is when the door is locked. Ann sits at her desk until 4:30, and then we have a select group of residents that will come in and volunteer at the desk. If there is no volunteer, the door is locked, or security will sit there until 7 once it is locked.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, the big issue we were hearing from residents is that they would go by at different times of night and the Porter McGrath AL door would swing open. And so one of the things that John and Rick did was they had a metal worker put a cap over that switch. So if a staff person goes out for break, they can exit out, but it'll lock the minute they clear. So they can't get back in unless they do what John is saying, which is push the button and say, I need to get back in. And then so it secures that entrance. You know, that's something that I know was a concern for a lot of people, and rightly so. And same with Four Bunker, that once that's locked down, it's locked down. And that if people are taking their dog out, you know, they can easily get out and they can get buzzed back in. So, any questions for John? Okay, thank you, John. Thank you. I'll turn it over to David, and David will walk us through the update on financials. Thank you.
Okay, save the best for last, right? Anyway, although it's not on the slides, Joe mentioned the audit for last year that we just completed. I wanted to give you a couple highlights that show how brutal last year was. You know, we even though we had a drop in revenue and we had an increase in expense, I mean, I'm sure all of y'all with your investment accounts saw the impact what the market did to you all. I mean, the operating challenges that we had only represented 40% of the overall impact to our audit. But one nice thing is the audit was, we got a nice comment from the Finance Committee Chair, Bill Cloyd. He thought it was the cleanest audit we've ever had. And he said that last year, so he thought this year was even cleaner, which I didn't know that that was possible, but it was a nice compliment. We had is unqualified opinion, which is what you always want. I think we had 3 audit entries, a lot of them were non-cash, and no management comments, no governance comments, no internal control comments. I mean, there's literally no comments whatsoever. So it was a very good audit. All the covenants were met, although they did drop down from operating results, but still we were well above the bond minimums. And a copy is available. Just shoot me an email, or shoot Joe an email, or anyone here in the company an email that you know of, or just stop by and we can send you out a report. We have it in PDF format, so we can send it out to whomever at your discretion. So that being said, let's go into the first quarter results. Let me get out of the way. Of March of this year, how we've fared. And we start off with the covenants, which, okay, this is not cooperating. Maybe I just need to point. There we go. Okay. So we first start off with the covenants because that's what the bond holders and board and finance committee like to most pay attention to. And we measure two things: debt service coverage and debt to net assets. Debt service coverage is has an annual impact and a monthly impact as it progresses through the year. Essentially, you add up all the income generated from the company, all the cash received from the entrance fees, and how many times does that cover 1 year debt service, 1 year principal and interest payments. So when you're at a 228, which we were September of last year, versus at the end of the year, where it's really important, because that's what shows up on the audit typically, 133, that means that 2.25 or 2.28 years of debt service were covered by the cash that was generated by the company. At December 31, that dropped to 133. The covenant is 125, so we were dipping low, but we didn't breach. And then March, here 3 months later, we're already back to what we were in September. So and that's a large part of marketing, doing a phenomenal job. What she reported, we budgeted just a little bit less than $2.5 million in entrance fees this year. And that was even considered a little high. We were paring that back because one of the board members at the time who was vetting the report, we originally had it around $2.83 million as the budget, and we never had reached that. And here we are nearly 6 months into the year, and we're going to beat what our annual projection was. So they could potentially double and be at if they keep going the way they're going, they'll be at $4.5 to $5 million by the end of the year, which is breaks all records for this since Joe and I have been here. So the debt service coverage is like a 1 year. It just shows what a 1 year impact. The debt to net assets is accumulation of everything since 1955. All the income generated, all the interest fees generated, all the expenses deducted. So it shows that the debt is almost half of what the total equity is. And that's the measurement. So it's a sum of the entire debt of 15 million divided by the equity or the fund balance or the owner's equity. It's not an owner's equity, but it's the equity, the culmination of the entire organization's operations since beginning of time. So when you get to a point where this number approaches 1 or goes over 1, then effectively the company is underwater. There's more debt than equity. It's just a measurement. But here the bank wants us to be no more than 125 or 1.25. And so that's the measurement there. And we've always been pretty low. So that's a good thing. So the more these covenants exceed the minimums, the stronger the corporation is. Here is the balance sheet. And you can see we have March this year compared to March this time, same time last year, and then what we were at the end of December. This is unaudited. I haven't been able to update these for the audit numbers, but it doesn't really change a whole lot, but still. But you can see that even in this first quarter, and this is in thousands, but in the first quarter, we've increased cash 149,000, even with all the entrance fees coming in. Expenses, as you will see in the next slide, are up mainly because of staffing and agency. But our cash, two big things. Our cash is down considerably from this time last year, and that's pretty much the result of last year's impact. Assets limited use, which are pretty much all the investments, are down. But we're starting to see a little bit of recovery in the market this last quarter or so. Liabilities are not much of a difference, 51,000. And then equity, 132. But the big thing here is what we've been monitoring even on a daily basis is the cash in bank. The income statement on a consolidated basis, interesting to note that compared to budget, we're right on. I mean, an actual of 3.473 million versus a budget of 3.473, that's kind of phenomenal considering all the variables that go into all the payers and all the mix and whatnot. But if you were to annualize this number and compare it to annualized, this 12-month number, we're actually up 25% compared to last year, or we're trending to be 25% higher. But the flip side of that, the operating expense, the way we're spending, we're trending to be 12% higher this year, the way we're spending, where the expenses are going, when we actually budgeted a 5% increase. So that's the never-ending challenge that we'll have is managing staffing, agency, and all that goes into there. The other revenue and expense, this is the investment income losses, the unrealized gains and losses, non-cash revenues, non-cash expense. But the number that we can control mostly is this operating margin. All this is the subject of markets and returns. So that this is where we need to. But, I mean, look at this, 12 months, 2.4 million. That's how we went in the hole, and that's essentially what we're down on the cash side. We went from a little bit over 4.8 million to 2.5 million in our cash last year. One good, nice thing to note is the swap. Even though it is an unrealized asset, if you will, it did, for the first time, change from being a $2 million liability to a $668,000 asset. What that means to us is if we decided to unwind the debt, pay off the debt, the bank would actually pay us money, $668,000, to unwind the swap. 2 years ago, when we owed $2 million, if we wanted to pay off the debt, we'd have to pay the bank another $2 million to unwind the swap. So it might be a consideration. Although the flip side, we unwind the debt now, we're going to pay a higher interest rate. So you have to weigh the higher interest cost versus what the swap benefit would be. And you can see there the unrealized loss last year, just from our investments, is 4.2 million. And this first quarter, we've recovered 209,000. Cash flow statement. The one nice thing I always like to look at, are we cash flowing positive on the operations? Yes. Have a net income loss. Even though we have an operating loss of what's controllable, the investments have returned. Unrealized gains and losses, investment income, still generate in total $184,000 profit. Life occupancy was received a little bit over $1 million. Normal spend of CapEx, $235,000. We should be, I believe I calculated $300,000 to date, so we are a little bit behind on that. But that's just spending more time on doing refurbishments instead of the planned stuff that we have in our capital budget. And then, of course, maintaining the debt payments. So, I mean, all in all, we have 149K increase for the quarter. So, things seem to be turning around to some degree. I mean, we still have a challenge with the staffing, and that's always going to be a challenge, or at least in the near term. So, outlook, let me get my notes. So our outlook, our spending is up. We look at what we're spending on a daily basis, and this includes only effectively operating expense, the direct care expense, and interest expense. It doesn't include non-cash expenses. So this is technically cash out of pocket, but it does not include capital or debt payments or principal payments. But it's just a measurement, and it shows that we've gone up slightly from December to March. And to give you an idea, we budgeted, or the way our budget was set up, is we budgeted just a little bit short of $40,000 a day, and we're at $41,811 a day. So if you add up all the expenses divided by calendar days, that's what the amount that you get. So the spending is up 5% more than budget, which is trending to be $700K overspent. But since we're early in the year, we can recognize this and put controls in place or mitigation efforts in place to correct by the end of the year. That's what's nice about doing the trending analysis. And the reason why we keep the capital mainly out of the calculation is because the capital you can have high spikes and low spikes. Now, just to give you a perspective, to date, we're spending on average $3,800 a day with capital and debt principal, and we budgeted $45. So that would skew the number if we put that in here. It makes more sense to do the operating than it is to include those other numbers. Yeah, and like I said, the challenge is the staffing. It's turned into such a transactional environment. Even now, I'm tasked with trying to figure out a way to make that risk go away. But anyway, I think yeah, that's pretty much it. Staffing is a challenge. I think we have a question. I'll open it up for questions, but.
What percentage can you project that our payments will go up next year?
No idea. The question is what percentage can we project what payments will go up next year? I mean, on one hand, I can say no idea. On the other hand, I can say we look at cost of living increases, and that's how we pretty much tie to what the increase would be. I know, a couple years ago, CPI was running at 5.8, 5.9, and we increased 4.5% because we thought it was going to taper off. But it didn't. It went this way, right? So here we were at a deficit of points. And then coming into last year, CPI, when we were measuring for budget, was running at 9.4. So what we missed in the year before, plus that year, is kind of how we got to the 12. So, and if you look at other communities, you look at Westminster, I'm sure they pretty much do the same thing as they look at CPI and what the costs are running and whatnot, and try and keep it close to that. Even Florida statutes say, if we raise the rates more than CPI for the Southeast region, we have to explain why. And we explain why anyway, but still. There's a underlinement in that most communities try to stay close to CPI or historical. Although I can't say exactly. That tends to be the flavor. So, I mean, I think the last time I checked, CPI is, 7%? 7.1. And we start looking at that pretty hard a month or two before budget comes in, as well as some of the key litmus tests is food cost. I mean, you see it at the grocery store. Dean sees it every day. Maintenance and their supply cost. I mean, it's, and especially a lot of these vendors now, when they see the gas prices going up, you'll see fuel surcharges on the invoices. So, as a litmus test, might help. Any other questions? It's a good question, though, by the way.
Bill?
Question is, since the swap is positive, can we close it out? Yes, we could, and that may be a consideration, but the alternate is you're paying a higher interest rate. Right now, we're collectively paying about 4 1/8 with the swap, and I think unrated debt right now, I mean for us, would be in the 6 to 7% range, which would be a lot more than what the swap is. But that may be an opportunity for the guys coming in, because one thing that Joe didn't mention, which you could find if you searched, is they're one of the few communities that is rated, actually an A- rating. And most of the communities, even the large, the top 10 or the top 50 or the top 200 that Ziegler monitors, majority of them are in the BBB category. To get to an A- is phenomenal. And which they would get a lower rate, and they might consider that. So, who's to say? But yes, we could. We would get some money back, but there'd still be closing costs, probably about the same or a little bit more. And then you'd have to probably pay a higher rate. Other questions? Come on, this is supposed to be riveting stuff. Not even from Sam. I mean, did you find the mistake, Sam? You didn't? Good. I don't think there was one either, so. But you're always good to find it for me. Thank you, everyone.
What I'd like to do is, thank you. I'd like to invite Samantha up here. I appreciate Samantha was in meetings today and was doing the tour with the gentleman from Westminster, so I thank you for coming, and you're going to help us by talking about life enrichment. Do you want to, let's see. Here you go, Sam.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's so wonderful to see you all. So I'm going to give you some updates. I haven't been in here for a while, so this feels brand new. What we have going on in the activities, life enrichment. Today, we are greeting our 2 new employees, our new social worker, Veronica, and then also our new DON, Ms. Dunn. So if you have an opportunity, that's going to be at 3 o'clock in the Porter McGrath on the 2nd floor. Please come over and meet them. And then, activities, we have 2 new people, brand new. Elizabeth, she's the full-time, and she's been here before. She worked in housekeeping. Now she's our full-time activities person. Miss Diane, she's new to the community, but she's part-time, and she's doing a wonderful job filling in, getting to know the residents, getting to know your likes, your dislikes, so we can start making a more robust calendar. We're working on Mother's Day tea. We're working on Nurses Week. Then after that, there's Nursing Home Week. So we have a gamut of things that's going on. We love when you come out and volunteer. We love when you come out and just engage with us. And thank you again for the wonderful people that came out and enjoyed the volunteer breakfast. It was so wonderful to see your faces. Anytime you need anything, please don't hesitate to let us know. That's what we're here for, to engage and boost your life, and you do so much for us, and we appreciate you. Do you have any questions for life enrichment activities? Okay, yes,
Nancy?
yes.
Campus activities, like I was at Florida Southern for a play, and there was a bus from Property's home.
Okay, that's a work in progress. Yes, ma'am. We're working with our bus. Did you want to speak on that, or just we're just working with our bus right now and plus the driver. And once we get all those things kicked out, that is one of the things on our goal for the future is to try to boost back up some outings. But we just got some things that we got to work on right now. But it's a work in progress.
John, I was going to ask John, our transportation, we hired somebody. When did they start, or when do they start? They start Monday. So we haven't had a driver, so Steve has been filling in. And so we can't have Steve working on the evenings and things as well as the day to cover. So once we get the driver who starts on Monday, we'll look at that with our life enrichment team and with transportation, see if we can offer some bus transportation. Okay. The other thing I would add is Dean had asked me to remind you, thank you, Samantha, thank you, to put in your reservations for Mother's Day. So Mother's Day is less than 2 weeks away, and they have the lunch menu posted and the sign-up posted over by Thelma and by the Grab and Go. So please make your reservations as soon as you can. Okay. With that, I would like to give Tasha's report. I'm obviously not Tasha. Tasha provided me with a report that I'll share with you. In assisted living occupancy, we have 42 occupied units out of 47 total units, with 5 vacant, which is 89.36% occupied. That's pretty good. I think our national average is 88, so we're above the national average for assisted living occupancy. And she says she has 1 move-in for the Garden Apartment 5 on deck for June. So a lot of good things happening in assisted living. We have 2 open positions for nurses in assisted living. 1 new nurse is coming in on the 2nd week in May. And for those of you that remember Skylar used to be the executive coordinator that supported myself and Maria at the time. It's her daughter-in-law. So some of you hopefully will get to see Skylar come and visit now and again as well. So that's what she had provided for assisted living. I appreciate all the team in assisted living and what's going on there. People that move into assisted living love it, and I see a couple of them here, and it's always good to see them in the resident council meetings. When they have the resident meetings, we had a meeting recently, and the interplay between the residents and staff, they've created very much of a neighborhood where everybody's kind of helping each other, residents and staff working together, and it's just a very good to see. So with that, I'm going to invite Etta to come up and speak to our spiritual life program. Etta? Thanks.
All right, I'll get you out of here by 2:30. Remember, tomorrow's our National Day of Prayer. I know that there are events going on around Lakeland that many of you may be involved in. Tomorrow we won't have a formal service, but the chapel will be reserved for prayer between the hours of 9 and 3. So if you want to come by, I'll have it set up for just some private meditation and prayers. But make sure in the morning, wherever you are, stop and let's offer prayers. Prayer for our world, prayer for our communities, prayer for our families, prayer for our children, our grandchildren. There's so many categories of prayer that are needed. Yes, so Sam's amen in that already. So yes, make sure we take time out tomorrow, because not so much that it's a national day of prayer, but we know it's a day that many people will be praying, and the prayers of the righteous availeth much. 2 or 3 touch and agree, and we can make those 2 or 3 numbers count. Is it tomorrow or Friday? Actually, it's tomorrow. National Day of Prayer is May 4th. It's tomorrow. That's all right. That's okay. You can pray Thursday and Friday. Our Spiritual Life Committee has been functioning throughout COVID. However, we've been limited. So as we're coming out of that part of limitations, we have new committee members who have agreed to come on board and get us going with activities, because we want to get our campus live and vibrant again, especially in spiritual life. And so I want to say thank you ahead of time. I won't announce those new members until they show up officially for our meeting next Tuesday, but we will be meeting next Tuesday and begin planning events through the summer and then our fall and also for Advent, because this year we would like residents and staff members to participate in writing our devotions for Advent so we can publish our own book in-house. And so I've got Dick's okay on that. So he's going to be our editor. He just volunteered. So thank you. Thank you, Dick. Thank you, Dick. Mother's Day again, May 14th. I won't be here for Mother's Day. You'll see that in your Now Read This. But Dick has been graciously filling in for me, making sure that I get some graduation requirements done so I can get across that stage. So he's going to preach for us on Mother's Day. There will be gifts in the chapel. So if you attend chapel, for my ladies, make sure that you pick up your gifts. They will be here, and then anything left over, Dick, you can distribute it if you like from there. But yes, you will have things here just as appreciation for the role of mothers. And again, Mother's Day is just not for biological mothers. It's for those who have served in the capacity of a nurturer. And you know, many of us have done that, even though we may not have biological children. So no one is left out on that day. Pentecost Sunday will be May 28th, and we'll have the chapel ordained for Pentecost as we celebrate the promise of the Holy Spirit. There's information outside my door, and thank you to the Vol Shop for purchasing my brochure holders. I try to rotate those out monthly, so there's a lot of things. I took all the things from Lent down today, and now we have devotionals. We have information on grief. We have information on the dying process. We have information on grief management, grief therapy. I even have some booklets on anger management, but I didn't put those outside the door because I'm looking to see who's going to pick those up. But you can come inside my office because we may need to talk first, and you can pick those up. But any topics that you really need help with, I've got a lot of literature, thanks to LaDonna and Donna and Barbara, when they work before me. I have a library inside my closet, actually, of materials that you all can have, and I try to keep rotating those outside my door. So feel free to come and just grab something. If something out there looks good, there's no cost, no obligation. You don't have to ask. Just grab it and take it with you. And if you need an appointment with me or need to talk with me, feel free to use my cell phone number, which is listed in our directory, and I try to make myself available 24/7. I'm not going to give my graduation announcements. They'll all be in the Now Read This, but I'm just excited about where you all have gotten me to in this journey, and I look forward for the things that God has in store. Any questions for me? See, I love it. See, we're moving from quietness to I got an amen.
Thank you, Etta. So that's it for the formal agenda. Is there any other topics or any other items or questions or comments that anybody has that they would like to share? Please, Grace. I don't, John, I don't have the name. Do you remember the name? Enrique. Enrique is the new driver. Enrique is the new driver starting on Monday. Any other comments or questions or thoughts or concerns or ideas? Okay. If not, thank you for your patience. Thank you. Thanks. What am I doing?